I'm going to tell you a story that I heard at Jummah today, which illustrated the importance of unity, something that Muslims are sorely lacking. The story goes, a father called his 7 sons to his deathbed and told them to each take a stick and break it. Each son broke the stick easily. Then he told them to take another stick, and he took a piece of rope and tied it all together, and then he told them to try to break that. They couldn't do it, so he told them, individually, each one of you is easy to break, but all together it is much more difficult. Shortly thereafter, their father died, and they went about the market with their little bundle of sticks, trying to teach others that same lesson and exalting the memory of their father. Soon they came across a man who took the sticks, and what he did is he untied the rope, took each stick individually and broke it. He told him, I have another lesson for you. The strength is not in the sticks, but in the rope that binds them all together. And this is what I wanted to talk about. Because in the Quran, in the 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse 103, God tells us, hold on to the rope of God all together, and do not be disunited. And remember the favor of God on you when you were enemies. Then He united your hearts by His favor, and you became brethren. And you were on the brink of the pit of fire, and He saved you from it. Thus does God make clear to you His communications, that you may follow the right way. The only thing that was different about the Arabs, after they received Islam and decided to submit to God and follow Prophet Muhammad, is that they became united. It was the Quran, it was the message of the Quran that united their hearts, and they became like that bundle of sticks. This is what God tells us. Prophet Muhammad did not bring any technology. He did not bring any new strategies. He did not bring any new weapons. All he brought was the rope to tie all the sticks together that before him were scattered all across the deserts of Arabia individually and were all easy to break. And that is the state of Muslim Ummah today. Everything that God tells us in the Quran is that rope. Simply neglecting one of those commandments can break the rope and cause us all to be disunited, which is what happened. For example, when God tells us in the Quran to read, in the 96th chapter, verses 1 through 5, God says, read in the name of your Lord who created. He created a man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous, most bountiful, who teaches by the pen, who teaches man what he did not know. When those who call themselves Muslims refuse to heed that message, so they don't study the Quran, and they don't know what's in it, then they can't follow what's necessary to be followed in order to achieve unity. If we don't read, then we don't know. And if we don't know, we can't be successful. Or for example, when God tells us to stand firmly for justice, in the 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 135, God says, O you who believe, stand firmly for justice as witnesses to God, even against yourselves, or your parents, or your family, whether rich or poor, for God is near to them both. Therefore do not follow your desires, lest you deviate. And if you decline or distort, if you don't want to tell the truth or you distort it, then God knows what you do. So when we neglect this, when we prefer some over others, when we prefer white or black, or Pakistani or Bosnian or American or Kurdish or Turkish over justice, if we neglect to stand firmly for justice for the simple reason that we identify with the group that is the perpetrator, then that will destroy unity. You will have no trust among people, and you have abandoned the rope of God. And if enough people do that, then the rope that ties the sticks together is done, and the sticks can all be broken individually. When God says do not commit zina, and when many people start to do that, they stop trusting each other with their sons or daughters, and the rope is broken. And when there is no trust, there is no rope, and the sticks can all be broken individually. When God gives sadaqah, when God says give sadaqah, give charity, give zakah, when that is not done honestly, what you have is some of us are very wealthy and some of us are very poor, and you have class distrust, economic class warfare. We don't trust each other, and the rope is broken. When God tells us to control our desires, to control our anger when we don't do that, and we lash out at other Muslims, at other people, then there is no trust and the rope is broken. When God tells us to control our fears and defend the weak, like when He says in the Quran, will you not fight? When there are weak from among the men and women and children calling out to God, calling out to Allah, save us from these people who are oppressors, and give us from you a guardian, and give us from you a helper. And we don't control our fear, what you get is places like Gaza, and before that Iraq, and before that Syria, and before that every Muslim ummah that was isolated and destroyed. And that will happen to every single one that's left. There's no question about that. Without unity, without the sticks being together and that rope holding them together, every single stick will be isolated individually and easily broken. If you see yourself as a Muslim, you have to understand that the rope of God, the truest rope of Allah, is the Quran and the most basic commandments that are in it. You don't have to move on to studying anything else until you have been successful in implementing the most basic of commandments, like telling the truth, being a person of your word, not committing zina, not being mutaffifin and cheating other people in business, measuring out right for yourself and being deficient to others, not giving sadaqah, not giving zakat properly. All of the things that are the simplest that God identified as Sirat al-Mustaqim in the 6th chapter of Quran, verses 151 to 153, or where God identified as hikmah, wisdom, in the 17th chapter of Quran, starting around verse 30 or 29. If you have not been successful in absolutely sincerely implementing that in your life, then you have nothing else to study, because you have not learned the most important lesson and are still unable to apply it to your test. Hold on to the rope of God, all together, and do not be disunited. If you don't hold on to the rope, if you break the rope, then all you are ever going to be is a bunch of sticks that are going to be broken and thrown into the fire. This is what the Quran teaches us. This is what history teaches us, what happened with early Muslims when they became united. This is what you need to know. Peace be with you.